Welcome to Ask the GM's podcast, episode 5, The Call of Cthulhu. I'm Zach for Ask the GM's podcast. I've been GMing for years, and I want to share topics concerning board games and RPGs with you. We have several guests tonight, including Pat.
Everybody, it's Pat. You know me, you love me, or you don't, whatever. And also, as part of my intro, I'd like to thank Zach to introducing me to Call of Cthulhu. On to RC.
I'm RC. I'm the second generation DM for life, although I finally escaped it. Got introduced to Call of Cthulhu beforehand. You guys have been the first people I've actually been able to play a proper game with, so it's been a big hoot and holler. I'll pass it to Brian.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian, and hopefully everybody can hear me better this week. I'm an aspiring GM with very little experience in general, but I'll pass it to somebody who has a lot more experience in Lindsay.
Oh, I don't know about that. Hi everybody, I'm Lindsay. I've only been playing TTRPGs for a little while, probably about 6 years or so, and that's mainly D&D, and I also have to thank Zach for introducing me to Call of Cthulhu because it's awesome. So, thanks, Zach.
Don't forget all the tentacles.
That's the best part.
Okay, to discuss Call of Cthulhu, we're going to start with a little bit of history. Call of Cthulhu came out in 1981, so it's a little over 40 years old. So it is one of the oldest RPGs on the market. It's also one of the oldest RPGs operated under the same company. D&D, if you don't know, it changed hands somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000s. Call of Cthulhu has been owned and operated by Chaosium the entire time of its history. It's currently in its 7th edition. Its editions aren't really the same as D&D editions. It was more of like publishing editions. And the important thing about the 7th edition is it was designed in part and focused by the Good Friends of Jackson Elias podcast. So the fans had a major input into 7th edition. RC, what do you think of Call of Cthulhu 7th edition so far?
Actually, I think it's the edition that I originally got introduced to a couple of years ago. And I've had a great time with it. It's straightforward, it's easy to get into, and it's really quick to teach new people, which has been a huge plus considering I pretty much walked into it blind.
And Brian?
Yeah, 7th edition's the only one I'm aware of that I know. I would agree with RC as far as being simple. As a new player, playing mostly Call of Cthulhu or Pulp Cthulhu, enjoying it immensely, and then going to D&D was kind of a shock because I had no idea what was happening in D&D, whereas much easier to follow along in Call of Cthulhu, and I know when I pass stuff and when I don't.
And Pat?
Oh man, let me tell you, 7th edition, hands down best edition. Only edition I know, but I'm biased. That being said, as far as being in the tabletop community, whenever Zach introduced me to Call of Cthulhu, it was far easier than D&D. And then, prior to that, I've had to show plenty of people how to play D&D, and I'm like, holy shit, this is where you get your foot in, not any other system. It's near and dear to me, and later in the episode we'll talk about Pulp Cthulhu, but that's my variation of Call of Cthulhu. That is my favorite. Lindsay?
Yes, I mean 7th edition is the only one I know as well. And it's wonderful. Like I said, I've played D&D for several years, just 5e. And I felt like it was easier going into Call of Cthulhu, and at first I felt like perhaps that was just because I had awesome people around me to teach me how to play, because when I first started playing D&D, it was really my friends and I teaching ourselves how to play. And to sit down with the D&D 5e book and to sit down and try to figure it out from scratch by yourselves is a little difficult. It was a little difficult and a little daunting, but it's actually, I think it was when Brian came in and started playing with us and watching how Brian immediately was able to just pick it up. And that's just a testament to Brian too, as a player, just in general. But it seemed like it was a little less difficult in picking it up. As I started creating my first character with Zach and Zach explaining to me how the game worked, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. The flow is better. It's easier. It's easier to understand, and it sets you up early on for success of, understanding what's going on and how to then also be ready to role play. Like, you're not having to, you don't feel bogged down with a bunch of other things, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's easier to just role play and follow along with the story, and you don't have to really worry or like worry about thinking or doing math really once you're playing. So it opens up to being able to role play easier and get into character.
I've played a lot of different systems, and one of my favorite things about Call of Cthulhu is you can occasionally glance at your sheet, and you just need to glance, because after that, you're focused on the table, and i.e., you're focused on role playing. You're glancing at your sheet just as like a reminder. All of the game is you focus on like what's going on and what your character's doing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Agree with that. 90% of what goes on during the games is strictly interactions between the other players and between the players and the GM.
Okay, moving on to the next topic. One of the major focuses on COC or Call of Cthulhu is how it's different than D&D. Big focus is the die system. You roll D100 and you're looking to roll under your skills. So you're rolling 100 percentile and you're trying to get under your skill. So if you have a skill of 70, you're looking for 70 and below. It also has a much different tone than D&D. D&D is usually argued to be a power fantasy, where you're trying to get more powerful, accumulate power, get abilities. Call of Cthulhu is definitely, you might be losing power, or you're at the whims of dark gods or things that go bump in the night. Does everyone kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as far as getting new people into it versus, a system like D&D, it's easy. I feel like it's easier to wrap your head around a D100 system because, I guess D&D is a more simplified math, that being a D20, so less smaller numbers, I suppose. But, it's, what is my chances of doing this? Well, if I have a 75% chance of doing this, then I'm probably, for the most part, going to be able to do it. Or if there's a 10% chance, like, I'm shooting in the dark here and hoping I land a hit, So I don't know. I feel like the understanding is easier. And for the most part, it's this whole, most of your interactions with your character sheet is, this array of skills in front of you. And there's not a lot of like flipping through books or trying to understand how certain things happen. It's just pretty straightforward. So maybe that's why it lends itself to its ease of play.
Yeah, as far as compared to D&D, where you have a skill of, you're going to attack something because that's what you do in D&D, and you roll, and your roll might be lower than what your proficiency is, but you still might do the thing because it has its own like armor or whatever. Where Call of Cthulhu is like, I'm going to shoot this thing because I have to, because it's got tentacles and it's coming after me. And for the most part, you're going to do damage to it, regardless of, if you pass your roll and you actually hit it, but it's not like, it might do damage, it might not.
And this may just be my take on Call of Cthulhu. It has a very set theme, and it plays to its theme very well, which is the sense of dread, mortality. And I know in Pulp that changes a little bit, but even the small amount of Pulp that I've played, and some of the stuff that I watched you guys play through with Tomb of the Serpent King, or not Tomb of the Serpent Kings. I apologize, my phone's breaking up, so I only got caught part of that. It plays to its theme really well, and it does what the role-playing system that it's meant to do, and it does it well. There's not really a focus on combat. What its focus is investigation and dread, and it really sticks to that as much as it can, and that's where I sit with it.
I agree, because I agree with that this is not based in combat. This is not, it's not that. And I think that's one of the biggest differences and especially shows through, the dice rolls and not having to check your sheet every 5 seconds. And I also love with the dice rolls, how basically, in D&D, you're looking for, depending on how you play, whether you're playing like Milestone or if you're doing experience points or whatever, you're trying to get to the next level by doing these things. But with Call of Cthulhu, when you're making skills rolls, you make a roll and you pass it, you're improving later. You're improving that skill later, which I think is really cool. That's something that I love about it. It's not like you're waiting to level up. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could do improve things you actively use, not hey, I'm level 2, now I know how to pick locks. No, you know how to pick locks because you picked locks.
Oh, and another reason why it's so or I guess easy for newer players to slide into is that it's the setting of it. It's, your characters are humans and they can do what humans can do. You're not getting into, oh, I'm a 9 foot tall, whatever, so I should be able to pick up the truck versus a normal guy. So if you're thinking about in your head, like, can I feasibly do that, or somebody that's stronger than me feasibly do that, then yeah. So it's easier to get your head wrapped around, the capabilities of your characters.
Very good. And then another big focus of Call of Cthulhu is, as everyone mentioned, the investigation, but it's also a game focused on handouts. And I can say, if someone who played D&D for years, handouts were barely a thing. Like the DM would make it and hand you maybe a sheet every once in a while. But Call of Cthulhu is focused on handouts. Lindsay, a memory that will probably stick with me for my entire life is you whipping out your pocket knife to open up that psychiatric file. And we basically read that for most of the session.
Yeah, that was awesome. We couldn't get that. I was like, well, here we go, let's go. And it was such a real moment. It was that you can't, you can't, it was amazing. And we did read that for about 2 hours. It felt like 2 hours, but it was great. It was so cool.
Well, it was a lot of looking at Dr. Hudson's notes on Roger Carlyle, and we knew going into that read that Dr. Hudson was more of a Freudian. So we had a good laugh about all the Freudian, phallic references and him seeing those kind of things in Roger Carlyle's life and thoughts. And the other thing about that is, I think for all of us at the table, it really put us more in depth in the story and added I would say like a gravitas to it or something. That's, oh wow, like this is the mental slip of this guy, or oh, here's this angle on these different characters. So whenever we come to a spot where those characters are at, it's like, oh, that's a real Dr. Hudson thing to do, or that's a real Aubrey Penhew like move,
Yeah, it's all about the immersion.
Mm-hmm. And further thing on handouts, like, one, thank you, Zach, for getting the Mask of Nyarlathotep, whole big deal. And as we're going along through this campaign, we're given newspaper articles and clippings. And yeah, we're specifically supposed to check out like a particular clipping in the article, but they have the whole rest of the newspaper around so you can get a feeling for what's happening in the world during that time period. So it adds more immersion.
And on top of that, like another big point is everyone was looking at this boat, this photo of this boat that you guys found. And Dave pointed out, oh, it's a junct. And everyone's like, what? It's like, it's an Asian boat. That means they're in Singapore, China, Japan. And it was just Dave like looking at the whole like spectrum of that photo instead of just the main boat in the center of it.
Yeah, so it really made us investigate a lot. We were like, okay, this in China. Okay, what ports are in China? Oh, it has this name on the side, but we could only get like maybe 3/4 of the name, so I had to guess at the last name of the boat with only part of the information. And other handouts, like we got an actual matchbox from the Tiger Club.
The Stumbling Tiger Bar.
Yeah, but just all the handouts. It was just like, we're reiterating this point, the immersion. And whenever Zach compared it to what he got with Curse of Strahd or what he got with Rime of the Ice Maiden, yeah, and just how lacking it is. And your player likes to look at the maps and all the things. We played an Aliens RPG, and we had a whole map of the entire town and could see all the points of interest, so we could pick and choose where we wanted to go.
And I don't remember what campaign Ian's running right now, but last week I ended up with, as everybody was basically being invited to participate in the campaign, everybody got their own, at least one, handout. I ended up with like 3 because I did some investigation, and as part of that, I found something that was crumpled up in a waste bin, trash can, and Ian crumpled it up. So it was more hands-on as far as, oh wow, I get to uncrumple this paper to like my character would to read what's on it, and that information it seems benign because it was like a receipt for something, but at the end of the day, I know that's going to become something that I will use later on while we're investigating.
Yeah, and this is maybe a spoke for Ian because I haven't like the Call of Cthulhu games that I've mostly been through with you, Zach, have been kind of shorter term. And we have gotten stuff before, like as far as handouts go, but um, it's really nice to see thematic handouts depending on where you are or what's going on. The character that I have now is an FBI agent that has connections in Roswell. And the handout that I got was a classified document that gave me a sort of spy mission that I'm going to be involved in as this investigation plays out. And what my ultimate goal is whenever it's time for me to bail is once I get everything that I've got, I'm out of there. My mission's done.
For the next topic, we kind of mentioned it before, but we're going to cover it further. How Call of Cthulhu just does the math up front, and then you never have to do math again. Like any point after character creation, you're choosing to do math. All of it's laid out on your sheet, and the book even provides you like a little math guide if you need to figure out like what half of 50 is, and then what 1/5 of 50 is. It's not hard math, but if you're doing it multiple times, it just saves on everything. How do you feel on that, Pat?
Okay, yeah, I'm glad you went to me first. I mean, we all know, percentages and D100s, like we touched on it. And I'm going to pick on D&D here for a second because, whatever. But say we're looking at our core characteristics in Call of Cthulhu. Again, 100 system. So if you have 75 strength, you're a pretty strong guy. But there's no conversion. Like, okay, and D&D 20 strength, you're pretty high, but how does that translate to the dice? Versus I ask you to roll a strength roll in here, and your 75 strength, you just roll under 75 strength. So there's no conversion. It's just straight dice. You don't have to look for a table like, oh, 20 means +5, and 19 means plus 4, and 18 means +4, and 17 means this and that, and it's just there's no conversions. It's just straight up.
Yeah,
And then, I was going to say one last thing is you can build a Call of Cthulhu character probably in less than 15 minutes. So it happens super quick.
yeah, it does happen very quickly. And with the way the roles work, they make it pretty easy as far as, okay, a normal success. I have a strength strength of 75. Half of that is maybe 37, and then a fifth of that. Um, I don't know the math, but like, okay, this is a normal success, hard success, or an extreme success, and that adds to the story. Like, I can pass a spot hidden extreme. Well, I'm going to get more information with that than I will with just a regular success.
The gauge of success in Call of Cthulhu is something that is extremely lacking in D&D kind of in general. Unfortunately, Pathfinder falls into that category too. A lot of the role playing systems that run on a system where it's just pass or fail, it's hard to gauge how well somebody's going to do at something unless on the DM side of things, you want to keep up with how much they actually succeeded at something in order to gain something. I know for a long time as a DM, that was something that I tried to keep up with. But as I've said before, I kind of became the super lazy DM where I was just kind of gave up on it. In Call of Cthulhu, things like that actually matter where say you got an extreme success, and maybe the extreme success was the only way in the world that anybody was going to notice this one small detail. It adds a little bit more depth to how the mechanics and actually testing your skills really counts.
Lindsay?
Yes, I think, it definitely it is simpler. I think not having to check your modifiers every time you roll really helps because you look at a sheet and the math has been done. You've already done it once and you just take a look and you roll and you're like, did I go under? Cool, awesome. It's not okay, let me check what I have for let me go ahead and roll, and then I have a plus, 5 for stealth or whatever. It's more streamlined. So there's a lot less time spent, like you said, looking at your sheet to double check on numbers, because there's a lot of numbers in that sheet. And I'm sure there are people who are really quick and know all of their modifiers off the top of their head, and you do eventually, I guess, if you play a character long enough, know them, and they do increase, and so it's just a lot easier to just take a look, and that way the immersion isn't broken, and you're still with everybody at the table. It's a lot less, up and down.
It also, from the keeper perspective, because I do play this game as well, keep it cuts out a lot of information. You just say, hey, everyone make me X roll. You don't have to know what they have in that skill or not. Everyone else could have 10% and one person could have 50. It doesn't matter. You just say, make the check.
Yeah, and the DMs don't have to stare at as many numbers because, on Zach's side of things, he's just looking for a hard pass or a regular pass versus, you're GMing for D&D, and it's like, oh, they need to roll a 16 or better, or they need to roll a little better after modifiers.
Okay, we've mentioned it a whole bunch, but let's talk about skills. What are some skills we love in Call of Cthulhu? And who knows the secret skill?
Well, we should all know the secret by now. Should we open up with it? I'm going to say yes. The secret skill is throw.
Okay, good, because that's what I was going to say, but I was scared to say it just in case I was wrong.
You passed. Now, that being said, it's throw because there's often things that need to be thrown that are highly dangerous, like, I don't know, dynamite and grenades. And as we know, explosives are probably one of our biggest problem solvers in Call of Cthulhu. Sometimes I call it breaking and entering an arson game. But, yeah. And as far as the rest of the skills, I'd say there's seldom any time when we look at our sheet and it's like we're missing one to figure out what it is we're doing. The whole array is there. Occasionally you'll have to be like, oh, we need to add this for this particular game. But yeah, that's what I have on it.
I will say
what
that
about
I
you, RC?
love the language skills. It's unfortunate that we haven't got to use them as much as as many of the characters that I've had recently that have had extra languages. The fact that I haven't got to use them as much is it's kind of disappointing. But I'm sure it's going to come up here very soon, based on the way that Ian's game is going. And we just recently had it come up in Zach's game whenever we summoned the devil to open a jar of pickles. And thank God I knew Latin.
Yeah, I will say, RC, that the language skills really come down to the setting or game. So maybe it's a session 0 talk with Zach or somebody like, hey, I'm thinking of getting this. Will this ever come up? And, Zach's pretty helpful with that kind of stuff. Like, no, I wouldn't bother.
I think the next skill that I would like to have just for giggles is demolitions, just because I got told about it. But whenever that comes up, it'll come up.
Not like, for example, our Children of Fear campaign that me and Lindsay were in together, languages came up a lot because we were going all throughout Southeast Asia, and as you know, there's a whole bunch of different languages there. So I was kind of the language guy whenever we were playing that because I knew 4 different ones.
Oh yeah. You were also trying to teach my character a little bit, which was fun. A little bit of Arabic. Yeah.
And I didn't speak English either. So that was
so it was interesting.
I think I'll take the low hanging fruit here. I think the mythos skill is probably my favorite, and I say that one because you can't add points to it when you create your character, and you really only get points by lowering your maximum sanity. So that in general is just fun. But if I had to pick one that wasn't Mythos, I feel like I've used Forgery in my last 2 characters, and I enjoy that. Um, and because I have no willpower, I'm gonna go with Fast Talk as my last one because
Liar. That's why you like to lie.
yeah, sure. Well, maybe I create characters that are good at that and enjoy just getting past a social interaction that I wouldn't be able to get through any other way.
Now, I will say that it's being an investigative, kind of setting, probably one of your most used skill. And I don't think I've had an investigator not have at least a middling capability in it. Spot hidden, listen. That's your bread and
Psychology.
butter. Psychology, that's another good one because investigating, you're trying to find out whether someone's trying to bullshit you or not.
Sometimes,
Yep.
sometimes library use comes in handy.
Just a bit. Just a bit.
When you're investigating, library use does come in handy.
Now, Lindsay, what about the most important?
I do say I enjoy quite a bit, though.
What about the most important skill?
Oh.
Credit rating.
Ah, yes, the most important. I really love. I was gonna say fast talk as well, but I just want to expand because like something about the skills that I love is how they break down, because you have fast talk, but you also have charm and you also have persuade. And so it's I like how they break down into different, like, as far as I once played a character who was once a nurse, and she had skill in first aid, which is like a quick fix in the field. But then there's also medicine, which is like, from what I understand, you are like a doctor's level of like, I could, I could go
Operate,
in
yeah.
and surgically remove a bullet or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
once to stop the bleeding, the other ones like actually fix you.
Yeah, it's like field medic and then like surgeon. But I just I love the differences and how they break down. But I do love fast talk because it's just, how well can you off the cuff bullshit? Like, that's what it is.
Now,
And it's
Lindsay, you
great.
left out
I love it.
intimidate after I almost hung that guy out of a window for you.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, usually one interpersonal skill, be it fast talk, intimidate, charm, persuade. You need one of those to try and get by in the world. And, I don't know if I've ever seen or heard a player like pick all four of those. Maybe that would be interesting. He would definitely be the party face for sure, but he'd be
this may
lacking
just
in
be
other
something that
departments.
I've noticed. If you spread your skills too thinly, and I'm notoriously bad for doing this with my characters in Call of Cthulhu, you will notice that you can't quite cover all the grounds. You may have to be, okay, are we gonna lie? Then I'm gonna be the party face whenever we lie. Are we gonna charm our way into a place? That's the guy that we go to whenever we need to charm. It really separates out the roles for the characters a little bit better. It's just something that I really enjoy. It's like everybody gets to play at the social gathering.
And it's since we're on skills right now, what did you call Dex in D&D, Zach? Was it the
Yeah, the
stat?
the stat everyone must like bow to because it's the most powerful and important.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu does not have that stat. There's not one thing that will set you far above. You can't be the jack of all. You need your party, and if you put 90 in spot hidden for whatever reason, you're just going to be garbage in other departments or most other departments.
I mean, unless your credit rating's high enough and your charm's high enough, then you can just charm your way into paying somebody to do something.
Yeah, credit rating does have that big swing to it. It wasn't till I think Lindsay started playing her two-headed
she
serpent when she had
99 credit
AOS.
rating. She had $5,000 a day. She didn't have to account for. She could have bought like a 6-pack of Model Ts, not even cared.
Yeah, and it
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
until
I'll just
then.
buy it.
Yeah, I was just like, "What's your problem?" I'll just throw money at it. Like, wow,
I was like, I looked at
pretty
Pat and I was
powerful.
like, here. I was like, Pat, just throwing money at him. I was like, yeah, I'll fix it. Don't worry about it.
Lindsay,
Here,
I can't
take some
afford
money.
cigarettes. I bought you a truck of cigarettes.
Now, we wouldn't say it's the stat credit rating, but it is pretty handy dandy.
Next up, we're going to cover some modifications to how you play. It's going to be bonus dice, penalty dice. Call of Cthulhu allows you to have either double penalty or double bonus. So it really makes passing rolls really effective because it replaces the tens place. So if you roll with double bonus, you have 3 tens places and a ones place. So you're likely to pass. There's also pushing rolls. If you fail, you can sway the DM to be like, I deserve a reroll because I'm attempting this check again. But with this focus on it, however, if you fail, the ramifications are worse, and there is luck, and I happen to love the luck system in Call of Cthulhu.
If you don't mind me jumping in real quick, I love the fact that there's 2 resources in Call of Cthulhu that your character has that are always dwindling, and they're they're so necessary to your survival. It's not HP. It's how lucky are you feeling today, and how much stress can you take before you just break open like a coconut. Because the longer that your character survives, the less luck that they're going to have. Eventually, your luck runs out, and eventually, your mind is going to break open. And I haven't had any characters get to the point to where they just cease to function, but we've seen it play out at least once. It's just such a joy to know that your character's dying in this game. And like, even on the player side, you're like, well, I'm gonna go crazy. I'm at least gonna have fun with it. It's just a great mechanic that works really well.
Yeah, when your luck's, you got like 10 luck left, or I don't know, I think I've had 3 luck at one point in time. At that point, you're just tightrope walking, just like, okay, please don't die, anything can kill me. I will say, as far as pushing rolls, I don't see our group doing it too much. I don't know, maybe, I know me personally, it's just the fear of like, if you fail and push it, something even worse is going to happen. And I do find that when I push the situation, I explain in depth like what it is or how I'm trying to push it, just so I can curb how Zach makes the bad stuff happen. I don't know, maybe that's just what I do. What do you go pushing your luck?
I think probably the one who would push their luck the most or push the roll the most would be Ian. Just because he is generally, I don't want to say an agent of chaos, but
I was
he
literally
plays-
about to say that.
O'Brien.
But-
For example, hey, I'm going to mouth off to some corrupt cops in their precinct. What happened to Ian? Oh, they took him in the next room. Just having like the crap kicked out of him.
Oh yeah, you got tooled up many a times.
Yeah, well, but that's what happens when you push a roll, and that's a fun dynamic as a player where, ooh, do I want to spend 20 luck and drop below 30 where I'm gonna die if I get hit, or do I want to push the roll and at least if I need to spend the 30 luck that I have to stay alive.
Maybe I'll just start pushing it more and let Zach have fun abusing me. I don't know. Does that sound good to you, Zach?
Not Zach, but I will say yes. And
Please do.
I honestly think like you have to be strategic about it. Are you going to push the 5% roll that you have? Probably not.
Yeah.
But if you push like an 80% roll, that's a little bit like I
Unless
can
you're
get by
Lindsay.
with that.
Unless you're me.
Now, I will say it's kind of hard to visualize how you're role playing that you're pushing your luck. Trying to think of an easy example. Zach, do you have any easy examples of how you would role play pushing
Yeah,
your
so one of
luck?
the examples comes from Shadows over Innsmouth. It's when the main character is trying to escape the inn. He's like, oh, I got to get out this window. He's like, it's kind of high. Then he's like, oh, I'm going to take down the curtain rod and use that as my escape. And that would be like the initial fail would be like, oh, it looks kind of high. And then the push roll will be like, no, I'm going to use the curtain rod and I'm going to pass my roll to kind of use that to get down to the next floor.
I got you.
I also like luck a whole bunch in addition to having it just be rolled when it's a question of what skill is that? Just roll luck. What? There's no skill for hailing a taxi at 3 a.m. Just roll luck. The other part of that is like,
Yep.
we've all been in that situation. Oh, I needed a 17 and I rolled a 16.
Yep.
Or sorry,
Oh, and there's another thing that we have to touch on when we're talking about luck: the group luck roll and your lowest luck person, and how fun that can be.
who's it? It's Unlucky Steve.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
going on? Well, the party's getting screwed. Why? Because it's the group luck rolls the person with the worst luck.
The best way
Well, Steve's here.
that I can imagine it is the party is sneaking in through like a museum or something, and he's the guy who kicks over the janitor's broom.
Yeah, that's a good way to visualize.
It also like works out combat. Who's the monster going to attack? Who is the lowest luck?
Yep. And so, therefore, losing your luck is absolutely anxiety-inducing. It's
Yeah, and
when you
definitely
get blasted when you get blasted across a room and you spend all of your luck to not die, and then you have no luck afterward, and you're
Do
like,
you mean
well,
to not take 20 automatic damage?
yeah, I mean that to not be completely vaporized
With that
that one
lovely
time.
11 HP.
oh yeah, oh yeah. And then I was like, oh cool. I was like, everything is fine. Everything is fine. I have 0 luck. We're gonna make it out just fine. It's all good.
Now, since we focused on luck a whole bunch, we're going to focus on the addition to Call of Cthulhu. Pat's favorite, Pulp Cthulhu.
Oh boy. So what I will say, well, okay, I guess we should start off with what is Pulp Cthulhu or Pulp.
It's
What
super.
Pulp
It's
is
super serious.
yeah, it's the most realistic role-playing game you can have. But in actuality, it's kind of spawned. I don't know the era, maybe 50s or something,
30s.
where they 30s, where they started printing like really cheap. I would say like comic strips almost. If you played Fallout, think of like Silver Shroud or any of those Unstoppable comics. And what it was really cheap, fun literature for the masses, for a form of escapism. So everything was way over the top, not your normal, average, everyday thing. And if you think like Indiana Jones, that would be like star example of pulp character. So it's all about being over the top, extraordinary, more than, the capabilities of regular humans. And I feel like comics owe a lot to its origins from pulp. Sorry.
No, that's a perfect definition of pulp itself. But what about Pulp Cthulhu?
So Pulp Cthulhu is a more action-forward Call of Cthulhu.
I'll help you out, Pat. You get twice the HP. You can spend luck on additional items, and you get an archetype such as Beefcake or Cold-Hearted or Two-Fisted.
In another note, counteracting something that I said earlier, that Pulp Cthulhu does really well. Hey, remember how I said that combat is really dangerous in regular Cthulhu? Now combat's just really goofy. I remember sitting in on you guys playing the Serpent campaign, and one of you ending up riding around by hanging onto its nostril, and it was just this giant pit viper thing that you guys were trying to beat the hell out of, and it was amazing. I loved trying to throw in and be like, hey, you guys should throw a grenade in its nose, or be like, hey, you should do this other really crazy thing, because it just fits for the setting of Pulp. It's like, you can't.
That was Ian. That was Ian.
Yeah, Ian decided to climb up a serpent statue and do an elbow drop onto a 100-foot long snake head. And, it's Pulp, so sure, let's go with that. It didn't amount to much because, it's a 100-foot long snake and he just kind of booped its snoot. But it just painted a fantastic scene in my head, so I was all for it.
To pure entertainment is really what it was.
Also, Ian held like a stick of dynamite to a tentacle monster and had it blow up basically in his hand.
He did, yeah. We were not to go back to the Gregs, but while he was being held by the tentacle monster, he's holding the dynamite, waiting for Rob to shoot the flame pistol before it exploded, to hit the dynamite so it would explode on the monster, and it ended up working. I believe Ian lost 2 fingers, at least
2
one
fingers and part
finger.
of his ear.
That's right. Yeah, 2 fingers and part of the ear.
Half of his body, or burnt half his body.
Yeah. I like to think of Pulp. I know this is kind of like a reimagination, but in cinema, the Grindhouse movies, where I believe one of the actresses ended up with a machine gun for a leg. That's Pulp. Like, it's over the top and fantastic.
And as far as combat, there's at least in the modules and whatnot, there's goons, so things that the party can still attack and thwart and be able to succeed at. But then you got your other half of the equation, like the Call of Cthulhu, like big bad monsters like a Gug or a 100-foot snake or so on and so forth. That still brings you back into that Call of Cthulhu wheelhouse of where there's still imminent danger. Our heroes are still hanging on by a thread, and there was quite a few moments in Running Pulp where it's like, I don't know if they're going to make it out of this. It's all in all, it's more action forward, more over the top, more fun, more explosive, more bang zoom craziness.
Yeah, you only feel a little bit safer, like a teensy bit safer, fighting, staying and fighting. Because with regular Cthulhu, it's mostly okay. we're running now. We got to go now. We have to get out now because you have 8 HP and you're about to get pancaked. Like there's no, it's light the dynamite, throw it, and get the fuck out. Like that's. But in Pulp, it's only a little bit less terrifying to stay and fight. But it is a little less terrifying.
So a good segue into that is monsters. Just talking about the Call of Cthulhu monsters, the big ones, the small ones, the things that go creeping in the night, and I'm going to have to call myself out. An important thing of the Call of Cthulhu monsters is reading their entire stat block. Isn't that right, Lindsay?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So
I feel like
there is. Lindsay was going to get chased down by a hound of Tindalos, as one of my friends lovingly calls them, Dorito dogs. Dorito dogs. We came up with plenty of good names. Not So Cool Ranch.
Not So Cool Ranch.
Not Yo Cheese.
Nacho Cheese.
Hot
I
no
hated.
chill.
I hated him.
And,
Yep, he was the
and
worst.
an important part of that stat block is the very, very bottom line where it says immune to mundane weapons.
Yep.
So unleashing that on my normal party with no magic weapons or relics or anything, which are very rare in Call of Cthulhu, was pretty much a death sentence. Was like, hey guys, I noticed this during play, so please just run away.
Yeah, it was very well. I mean, I was getting my ass out, anyway. But the look you gave me, you were like, no, you guys got to go now. Like you need to run now. And so it was. You did have mercy on us a little bit with that too, because isn't it supposed to be able to find you wherever you are? And
if a person sees one through a gym looking back in time, 7 billion years in the past, it can catch up to you in a month.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So they're quick.
Yeah. Needless to say, I grabbed the other PC in this scene, and we ran as fast as we could out of the telegraph office. I think we were in a telegraph office.
Those poor people waiting to get their telegraphs that got eaten.
Nommed completely.
And then after that, just running into certain things. Pat, a dark young.
Yeah, me and him had a little hug out, and he made a great character arc for my my character in that campaign. But he is among one of those many creatures that if you run into him, it'll possibly be like a TPK or anything like that. In our instance, the presence of him drove my character into a bit of rage and uncontrollable rage. So chance that I could even attack my own party. And luckily I didn't. It all kind of worked out just right. So my guy lit a few sticks of dynamite and charged up and jumped on him and gave him a hug. And he started flying up above because this was in a bazaar and a massive crowd of people around us. And I just flew into the sky, me and this star vampire. And we both exploded all over the crowd. So it was
so
good.
No,
it was so good.
That part's great. I was referring to the
glorious.
dark young, the big tree monster that like wrapped you in a tentacle and ran off with you.
The one that survived.
The one that Tucker bowed to.
Yeah, bowed to and survived.
Oh. See, I think of that as like the computer game Nerd Monster, because I'm not familiar. I know it's tentacly, and I know what it was doing.
It's pretty much a giant tree with tentacles.
Oh, okay.
Isn't it impervious to like fire and burning and like acid and
bullets do minimum damage with 1.
Yeah, Pat
I know it's impervious to my shotgun. That I do know.
Oh, it did 1 damage. It did
a drop in the bucket.
A drop in the bucket.
Now, Pat, would you like to tell the story of engaging a wizard?
Okay, so there it was. We were playing Mass Campaign, and I was playing. I think it was my first Call of Cthulhu character. Tennessee Terry, the knockoff Indiana Jones, because everybody's got to make that pulp character at some point. That was my iteration. He was terrible archaeologist, but I want to think that maybe he got most of his archaeological finds at the end of a gun, but who knows with Tennessee Terry. Anyways, we go into the spice house where there's a supposed shamaness or witch doctoress or whatever. We didn't surprise her. Like I kind of kicked down the door, guns blazing, and she was ready for us. And I think I get like 2 or 3, or it was like 2 critical shots and a regular shot, and they just pink, pink, pink off of her. And I was, currently the action, brawly, fighty guy in the group. And whenever I did, nothing to it, I turned around. I was like, guys, we gotta go. We gotta go now. So then it turns into our whole party running down a stairwell while she's doing her voodoo that she do. And yeah, it ended up with the whole building exploding at the end of that current situation. That's why we say throw is so good, because explosives do more than bullets typically.
And Lindsay, of the party, you're actually the one that's encountered the most Elder Gods. How do you feel about those?
I'm not, I don't want to say that I hate them. I feel like that's strong. That's strong language. Let's just say I'm not fond. I'm not fond of them, to be completely honest.
96 sanity loss gifted a reroll into a 97 sanity loss.
Oh yeah. And floating in, where was I?
Face.
Was I in astral plane or something? I was just floating.
Almost.
I had we were exploring this incredibly unsettling. Was it a house, or was it an inn, or was it, I can't remember. Yeah. And we were debating for about 15 to 20 minutes about which door are we going to open, because we know when we open one of these doors, it's going to be some level of, screwed up. So which one are we going to open, and, how are we going to open it? Are we just going to brush in or whatever? We decided we're just going to slowly just kind of,
I recall Greg
door.
deciding to count down from 5.
That's what I'm saying. And then door kicked open, and I was like, well, okay, that's not what I thought was going to happen.
It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pick, but he turned it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm opening this one.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pick turned into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kick the fucking door open, and then it flies open, and I'm sucked into space, and
You're gonna go meet your new top guy, your new best buddy.
My buddy, yeah. I mean, honestly, maybe they just want a friend. I don't know, but honestly,
and you were you were cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs at that point.
Oh yeah. You were like, okay, let's roll for sanity, and I was like, okay, 97. Lindsay, just roll again. Take another roll. Okay, fine. 99. Okay, cool, awesome. Well, check him out, guys. Lindsay is now an NPC. Bye bye.
And then the follow-up Elder God, hey Lindsay, why don't you just take 20 damage? I don't have that much HP. Let's just take 20. Just roll a die. He's above rolling.
The question is, Lindsay, did those dice go into dice jail after that game?
No, because it was a stupid bot on
Discord.
Online
yeah,
that hated my guts.
Oh yeah, it made Lindsay roll shit forever. It's like, hey, why don't you roll 95, 94, 90? It's like, DiceBot, are you able to roll like a number that isn't like 87?
Like who fucking hurt you, DiceBot? It was not me. I didn't do it. I promise. We can be buddies. I don't know who hurt you, but let's talk about it. But no, I think we changed bots after that. I feel like we changed DiceBots.
We did
after that. Yep. Because it was anyway. No, so basically to sum up, not fond. I almost got disintegrated. I went a little cuckoo. Anyway.
No. The last time you got to have like an iguana turn into like a King Kong monster and fight another one.
No, that was pretty cool. That was
that was going to be my honorable mention. Zach was going to be the Gug, because we've had 2 different interactions with that thing that were vastly different, because in Mask we nurtured that little baby for days, feeding it and whatnot, before we went to that encounter and we had a kaiju fight between big monsters. And then we approached it again in Two-Headed Serpent whenever we were in Borneo and the Dreamlands were creeping into the real world, and it was basically like a Jurassic Park T-Rex situation where it was just chasing the party. And I remember, I want to say one of the Gregs was like, oh, is that something we can fight? Because, we're in Pulp Cthulhu, so sometimes you think like, hey, maybe I can fight that. And I remember the rest of the party was like, no, we're going to go down this hole.
That was me. I'll claim Greg on that one because I
Really?
yeah, I'm pretty sure I wanted to poke it. And that would be because I might have listened ahead on a different podcast. Because I not that I wanted to know what was going on, but I was curious. And when you're captivated and you're it's kind of like binging Netflix. Um and everyone else was in the hole and I was in the hole and I like saw this thing. I was like, oh, they totally like defeated this thing so quickly. Like we could definitely do that. And everyone's like, no, we're going this way. Okay. I guess I'm coming. That's fine.
Yeah, they're bad news.
If I remember, everyone was trying to hide, and Zach was just rolling 90s out of nowhere, like trying to scramble in a tree or a bush or something, and it just wasn't happening for him. So he found the hole. And one last honorable mention for monsters, one we didn't get around to, but the Dhole, essentially the sandworm from
Shai-Hulud.
Doom, if you're familiar. Shai-Hulud. The old man of the desert. We need to stop nerding out about Dune here, Zach. They might find us out. But in the description of it, for first of all, whenever somebody loses sanity for it, I believe it was a D20 that you roll, so that's something just to see this thing. And the other part, to physically affect it, I think it said it needs to be something like the power of a train, like literally driving a train into it would just bump this thing.
Its damage bonus is
And-
literally described as enough to destroy a battleship.
Yeah, like you don't even need to-
86 D6 is
Cool.
the extra damage it does. That's
Shut the hell up.
that's the
insane.
bonus damage, not the initial damage. That's like that's the icing on
You bring
top
a bunch.
damage.
Some certain people were crawling around in its tunnels, and y'all did have an opportunity to see it, but I think y'all veered off at the last moment.
We didn't have enough dynamite for that situation.
No, there's not enough dynamite for that situation.
Nope. No,
I
there
would
isn't.
also like to bring up, like in this game, there's no fighting Cthulhu. I can do it. Like no. Don't fight Elder Gods. Don't think you can. They will just destroy you. Cthulhu gets to eat D3 investigators around as like a snack action, and then he does 46 D6 as a bonus to his attack if he's not stomping on you.
Snack
If you
action.
happen to kill him, he just reforms D 10 minutes later. So enjoy your cigarette break.
See, that's the thing. Like anytime this is where it is more realistic than anything else. Because if I know I met a demigod or messenger of a god or a god, I'm not gonna be any kind of conflict with that being. I'm gonna ask what they want from me and pretty much comply. But that's me. And I haven't. Well, I guess I did just meet one of the gods in our most recent Tuesday campaign, but I always think of the 100-foot serpent in not Borneo. It's in Two-Headed Serpent. But
They was in Bolivia.
Olivia, yeah, it was another B. And I'm pretty sure like we were struggling with the snake, but pretty sure used like an eye or like a jewel that was an eye of a serpent and like started like using that as a weapon and it did a fair amount of damage if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was definitely a dangerous situation. I remember. I think Zach and Lindsay, did you guys get poisoned down when you're taken out of the fight because it was giving you negative vibes?
Hmm.
And then
Was that
Luke-
just Zach or was it both of us? I
that
can't
was
remember.
both of you, I
Oh,
think.
yeah. Hmm.
Not wholly remember. And I know Ian was dangling from its nose after his little elbow drop. Luke was climbing up its back with his little samurai sword. And Brian was down there with that serpent eye statue, like blasting it with beams of energy.
Yes, with my possibly dwarven character, and by dwarven I mean I believe my size was a 35, which is abnormally small.
Yeah. I pictured you as a dwarf in
Yeah.
my head.
Yeah. Pretty sure my nickname was Stump because I hid behind stumps.
Yeah, but overall, the thought is like, don't face certain things. You can't. It will destroy you. If you happen to face Hastur, he does your dead amount of damage. It literally says it. It just says fatal. There's no roll. You die.
Yeah, it's as separate game system, but Delta Green, pretty much the same system as Call of Cthulhu. I'm fairly certain Hastur just ate someone. Like, he showed up and they disappeared from existence.
Oh, yep, that's exactly what happened.
Brian.
Yep.
Pretty sure I got torn in half, and that was the end of Arno, I believe his name.
Nommed.
Agent
Completely.
got nommed. Nom nom.
Thank you for joining part 1 of Call of Cthulhu. Please listen to part 2, which will follow up shortly.